PAX, Journey Home, Chapter 30. Peter found the front door key where it always had been left and let himself in. He pulled open the curtains on the living room window beside him and stood blinking for a moment. Everything was exactly the same, only dulled by a year-thick layer of dust. But at the same time, somehow everything also looked foreign, or maybe unreal. He tried the kitchen. There he had the same unsettled feeling, as if someone had gone to a lot of trouble to replicate this old home, but had gotten everything slightly wrong. Hands on the counter to steady himself, he took a few breaths. It's just stuff, he told himself. Just some cupboards and pots and pans, some couches and chairs. Just things, and yes, his parents had used them back when they were alive, and that was what was spooking him. Maybe it wouldn't feel like his home anymore. Maybe it didn't suit him as well as the cabin he'd built, but this place, was his place now. He walked out of the kitchen. In the back hall, the door to his father's room stood half open. He yanked it closed without looking inside. The next room was his. At least he'd feel okay in there. His room had always been a refuge. He pushed open the door and immediately hit with the looming presence of all that he'd lost since the last time he'd been inside. It's just a room, he told himself, and he walked in and faced it down. Pax's favorite toys in the corner, on the blanket he used to nap on, his collar on the windowsill, baseball trophies lined up on the bureau with the watch Peter never wore and the cap he barely took off, ball game ticket stubs tucked into the mirror, crumpled notes from school on the floor, the orange juice he drunk that final morning last spring, dried now to a brown disk at the bottom of the glass beside his old rocket ship lamp. Everything from a time when he was a normal kid, a stupid normal kid who had thought that things couldn't get worse after you lost a mother. He opened his bureau drawers, his closet, and then slammed them shut on all the stupid clothes the stupid kid had worn back then. Peter dropped to his bed. He wrapped his arms around his chest, and he felt they were the only things holding his heart in. When his mom died, Peter's father had gone around the house gathering up everything of hers to throw away. Peter had scrambled along beside him, not understanding how his father would want to be without them. Now he understood. He got it all now, all right. Maybe he should burn it all, make a big fire, burn everything that could remind him of his old life. He left the room and walked out the back door. Here in the backyard he could set the blaze, make a base of kindling, dead branches from winter storms all around, pile it with hay, load all his stuff. Then Peter checked the shed, and yes, a can of lighter fluid was on the top shelf. He pulled it down, and a knife shattered to the floor. He picked it up. It was nearly identical to the jackknife he'd gotten from Vola, the one in his backpack right now. For a second, he wished he could show this one to her, and then he wished he could ask his father where it had come from, how come he'd never seen it, but he pushed those thoughts aside. He flipped open the blade. The blade was pitted and dull, but still it was a perfect tool. He really liked Vola's knife. It was the one he'd used on his journey last year, the one he'd used to smear the blood oath on his calf as he swore that he would find PAX. He still had a scar from that slice. Sometimes he felt an itch there and wondered if a mosquito had flown up his jeans. He'd rolled them up to find nothing but the tiny crescent asking him to remember. Well, he needed to stop remembering. He snapped the knife shut, and right there in the dim shed he performed the penance. 3 times in his mind and eyes, he dropped the rock over the den entrance. The memory of making this his oath that day was strong, though. The penance wasn't enough. Here at his own home where he had lived with PAX, it wasn't nearly enough. He knew what would be, a penance with a new final scene, a sin he was always too chicken to force on himself, the thing his father said he should have done, put the kid out of his misery. His father, he knew, would have used a gun, quick and neat, but Peter had been only 7 years old. Maybe he would have been strong enough to just drop the heavy capstone directly on the little kid, life out immediately, much more humane. Bile rose into his throat the first time he did it. He spat it out, gritted his teeth, and ran it again. Do it. Walk away. Don't look back. He wiped his eyes and went through it a 3rd time. Even that didn't feel like enough. You couldn't go around some things, Jade had said. You have to go through them. And right then, Peter saw clearly what that meant. It meant he had to go back to the scene of it all, the old rope mill. He had to stand on that spot where he'd let PAX go, and where he'd said goodbye to his father. Tonight he would sleep in this house, go through that. Then tomorrow morning he would walk to the mill site and feel all that loss, go through it and come back out. And then finally he would start over.